We'll call to order at 7:02 this town council meeting on Tuesday, September 26th. Everyone could please rise for the pledge of allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Everyone can be seated. That brings us to item 4, proclamations and presentations. So with us tonight, we have Jeff Gallagher, and we're going to read this proclamation into the record, and then we'll have Jeff and his family join us for a group photo in front of the town seal. So with that, a proclamation to recognize the efforts of Jeff Gallagher. Whereas Jeff Gallagher's open and affirming leadership have provided support for inclusion, a voice against hate, and a dedication to our community. And whereas Jeff Gallagher demonstrates his devotion to our community by serving as the Tolland Fire Department chaplain of the Connecticut State Police, as well as volunteering for numerous organizations, including Tolland Soccer Club, Miracle League, and Special Olympics. And whereas Jeff Gallagher ensured safe and welcome space for LGBTQ plus group meetings and events to help make LGBTQ plus residents and organizations in Tolland feel welcome and supported. Whereas Jeff Gallagher rallied to support other allies, most recently organizing a group in Enfield to participate in a vigil following the disruption targeting the LGBTQ plus community. And whereas Jeff Gallagher has spoken out against instances of targeted hate and organized a Love Louder message countering hate with love by collecting donations to benefit a local LGBTQ plus organization. And whereas with Jeff Gallagher's nearly 10 years of dedication to our community as a whole, Tolland is better off for his commitment to treating everyone with respect and kindness. And whereas Jeff Gallagher has demonstrated civic leadership, especially in the sport of inclusivity, acceptance, and public service. Now, therefore, I, Steve Jones, Chair of the Tolland Town Council, on behalf of the Town Council and community at large, do hereby recognize Jeff Gallagher for their endless efforts to enhance the lives of Tolland residents, dated at Tolland, Connecticut, this 26th day of September 2023. So thank you, Jack. Then go ahead. We'll invite you up here with the chairs over and get the gonna be nice.
It's a fun fair.
Oh, it's gonna be, yeah. Good, yeah, voice in one day. Be squeezed in.
Plenty.
We're good. Thank you. Thank you. Have a great night. Thank you. Appreciate it. Safe travels home. Thank you.
Congratulations. Hanging on.
Bye, Jeff.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to item number 5, public petitions, communications, and public participation on any subject within the jurisdiction of the town council with a 2-minute limit. If you are on the Zoom, you can hit *9 or raise hand function. And if you're in the room, you can approach the table and state your name and address for the record. We'll start with Zoom, and I see Jody Coleman Marziallo. I'll ask you to unmute.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask if the council had time to look into the comments from the September 12th meeting regarding the Historic District Commission. We had a statement that we wanted to make in response to that. In response to the town council action at their September 12th meeting, the Historic District Commission discussed the sidewalks at their meeting on September 20th, and the following action occurred. There was a motion. The Historic District Commission at no time made any proposal for a sidewalk on Tolland Green. The comments made by the Historic District Commission Chair to the Town Council on September 19th were a factual summary of Commission discussions and should be placed back on the record. This was in response to Katie Murray's comments about an illegal meeting. I was wondering if you had the opportunity to look into that. But we would like the statement back on the record because they were a continuation of discussions that we've always had on our agendas for over a year now. I would appreciate that. And if you have an answer to my question, that would be great too. Thank you.
All right, well, we'll certainly look into that. And actually, Jody, if you can state your address to the record.
79 Tolland Green.
Okay, thank you, Jody.
Thank you.
Certainly request and see what we can do. Thank you. Anyone in the audience?
Sean Lappin, 168 Mountain Spring Road. Hello, Town Council. It is me, Sean Lappin, here again to talk more about contaminated wells and 168 Mountain Spring Road. At the last meeting, Councilman Luba made a comment that the sidewalks were a topic that had been lingering for 3 or even 4 years and was the most talked about topic around town. When I heard this, I knew that I hadn't been vigilant enough in my own efforts to talk about contaminated wells because I want that to be the most talked about topic so that I can get a resolution along with many other residents. This contaminated well issue has been plaguing my residents and others for 7.5 years, and I know that others are in a similar situation. My hope is that now the sidewalks have been voted on, we can move on and focus on another major issue, which is the contaminated water, because in my opinion, there's not been enough focus on this, on moving the needle for this issue. To me, it is concerning that not only has the full Langen report not been released as of yet, to my knowledge, but even worse, it is that I have yet to hear any updates from the properties that were in the first report, of which 168 Mountain Spring Road was one. My concern is that there seems to be a lot of waiting around for other reports to be released, for other properties to be discussed, when clearly action can be taken on some. From a project management standpoint, there are several ways to tackle a project, but it seems that we are taking the slowest approach possible, the waterfall method for those that know. This is a linear system of working that requires the team to complete each project phase before moving on to the next one, while a different type of project management, the agile methodology, encourages the team to work simultaneously on different phases of the project. There is no reason why my property needs to wait for the vineyards report to come out to move forward with addressing my contaminated water. The vineyards are 7+ miles away from me, and their resolution and their issues will not impact me any more than mine will impact them, and yet I seem to be in a holding pattern because of them. Based on the Langen report, I would like to know what has been done to further their recommendations for my property, which specifically talk about drilling a new, deeper well to some unknown depth to get me potable water. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Are there any other residents on Zoom, anyone else from the public that would like to approach the table? All right, going once, going twice. All right, 3 times. That brings us to public hearing items. There are none. 7A, reports of boards and committees responsible to the council. The firehouse subcommittee met last week. We are on track and on budget. The foundation is being verified by CHA for structural soundness as that has been completed. There were a few minor updates that had to be done. There was a logistical issue, but they're working on that. There are potential delays on the wall panels due to the Sherwin-Williams plant fire in Texas. The new septic tank is being installed soon, and they expect the steel frame to be put up at the end of October. Due to scheduling conflicts, the next meeting is tentatively for October 5th. Unless there's no urgent business, if business does arise, we'll work into a special meeting. Conversations are ongoing around 440 and the next station, and 140 is the final station, and we expect recommendations to be brought back to the subcommittee at a future dates. Land acquisition met on Monday. We are expecting a marsh assessment in by the end of the month, and the committee approved spending the $2,000 toward a verification of the assessment once we receive it as a part of DEEP's SWIG grant, which is the Open Space and Watershed Land Acquisition Grant Program, which will be due at the end of October or early November. And that is it for me. So I'll pop over to Road Salt Task Force. If there's any updates.
The Langdon report went out via hard mail 2 days ago. And electric mail to one of the representatives up in the vineyards yesterday. We've heard nothing back. And we'll look for, we're waiting to hear back from Heller and Sage on getting the report to DEP, best to get that information over to them. We continue to move forward. We'll talk about next steps at our next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
ARPA subcommittee.
Yes, so we meet, this Thursday, excuse me.
hopefully a short meeting, just trying to get an update from Bruce Watts on, the usage of the funds that have been a great success for our community, and then also just a status on large vehicles that, possibly ARPA money could use for potentially, capital items. Amy or Brian, did I miss anything? Okay,
Sure, I think shaking hands.
all right.
All right, that brings us to seven B, reports of town council liaisons. There was a conservation committee meeting on the 14th. There's gonna be a tour of the Kohler management area. That'll be headed by Jane Seymour of Deep on October 7th from 9 to 11. That's open to the public. They want to send out a quick reminder that the deadline for the photo and poetry contest is the 30th. Parsiac tree harvesting has begun. Four is planning that 5 trail days. And a star party is scheduled on October 20th with, I believe, a teacher in the public school system, Mark Rudy, who has been coordinating with Mr. Rubino to have more school and conservation related events. The Water Commission met last week. There's a new engineer associated with the Connecticut Water for the Route 74 Bridge project. And they wanted to make it note that there was a geocoding issue for anyone that received erroneous water warnings after the Springfield water main break. Some residents may have received text messages about their water quality issues. So that was just a error on their part. And I believe that is it for me. So I'll pop over to my right, Councilman Yudichak.
Yes, so the Commission on People with Disabilities met last week, just discussed the update on the ADA sidewalks. And obviously they're pleased with the decision, that was made, and just hopes that it continues to go, smoothly and it happens. I think I forgot to mention last time that Julie Burns is the new, vice chair of that committee as well, and discussion on surveys that they would like to do for the community to find out what their concerns are or ideas. That's it.
Thank you, Councilor Luba.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, that, VRC met last Thursday. I was unable to attend because of a prior work obligation. That, I did have an opportunity to, review the minutes and the, information, just to bring people to the agenda that went on, that they continue to discuss the issues regarding the library and senior center, using that as sites to basically expand their social hour meetings, so that we can get more people involved to make it easier for people to access, including the coffee house, and then still looking at using the spot as a potential after hours meeting as well. That they also discuss the issue of Wall of Honor, where there's been discussion for some period of time now about using a video Wall of Honor to either replace or supplement what we have currently in Town Hall. So that they're looking at that. And then again, further discussion regarding the Veterans Monument and tying it into the overall sidewalk operations.
All right, great. Thank you. I'll bring us over to Zoom with Councilman Nuccio. I'll make sure I have to ask you to mute. There you go. I got you. You should be good to unmute now.
Got it. Yes, thank you. PCC had a meeting, but they didn't have quorum, but still discussed some upcoming stuff regarding the Harvest Fest. So right now, full swing on Harvest Fest and getting everything set up for that. And again, just encouraging everybody to come out with that. I think 4 or 5 different food trucks now, including Cousins Lobster and Hot 44. And I think last time I checked, we were a little over 20 scarecrows, which isn't as high as last year. So if anybody out there has a business or organization, we are encouraging you to sign up for the Harvest Fest. And that's all that I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Nuccio. Vice Chair Regan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Planning and zoning met last night. There was an extensive discussion with developer Steve Williams concerning multifamily development in town. And as I say, it was extensive, probably about an hour. So I would refer you to minutes if you wanted some more details about that. There was a discussion of group and child daycare homes and a vote to amend regulations for use in the village center zone to allow group and family child daycare, and to set a public hearing for October 30th. So that will take place. And then under the planning update section of their agenda, for those of us who were here last term, or maybe even the term before that, there was a car wash proposed for across from Fieldstone Commons, across from Big Y area. That's back. I think, maybe the COVID had something to do with that being delayed, but, PZC is expecting the company that's developing that car wash to be, in front of them in the next 2 months to request an extension of their approval, which is getting ready to expire. So they expect them to come back in to look for that extension. So, hopefully that car wash will be back and we'll be able to see that development in town.
Yeah, no, because I remember that one being, it was actually 100% recycled water, like it was supposed to be like a green car wash. It was a very novel concept, but thank you for sharing again. That's it. Counselor Khan?
Nothing to report.
Okay, Counselor Murray?
The Historic District Commission met last week. Was not able to attend because it was sixth grade open house with twins. It requires two parents to go. But the minutes are online. There was an approval of a COA as well as a discussion regarding the sidewalks. And the HDC is going fully hybrid going forward.
Great, thank you, Counselor Murray. That
I'm
brings,
sorry,
oh, go ahead.
they're going fully Zoom going forward.
Please input.
Yes,
Okay,
thank
thank you for the clarification. All right, that brings us to 8, new business. So we'll go to 8.1, consideration of a resolution to approve the revised personnel policies and procedures. I believe here are 2 key updates. One is the inclusion of Juneteenth, which puts us in alignment with state and federal holidays. And the second is an alignment with our union agreements that sick leave is accrued and starts up again on the anniversary date of the employee's hire date starting next year. Is that correct, Mr. Boley?
That is correct, obviously, with Juneteenth, where'd my notes go? There they are. The towns all surrounding us, celebrated. It was a federal holiday as of 6/2021. State holiday as of 6/2023. And this is a measure to have it be a town holiday, as of June 19th, 2024 here in the town of Tolland. It's a holiday commemorating the end of slavery in the United States. A lot of history behind it. I encourage anyone to look into the holiday for more information. And Mike Wilkinson's here if anyone has any questions on either of those. The total number of hours for total number of employees who would receive the Juneteenth holiday off is 688 hours.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from council members?
Danny's talking, I think.
She might be speaking to somebody else. No, she's shaking her head.
Oh,
Very good. She's usually good about raising her hand. All right, seeing no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolutions outlined in 8.1.
So,
So moved by Counselor Luba, or so moved by Counselor Murray, second by Counselor Luba, and because we have a hybrid style, we'll go through a roll call vote. Counselor Nuccia,
Aye.
Counselor Yudichak,
Aye.
Counselor Luba,
hi,
Counselor Egan, aye, Counselor Khan, Counselor Murray,
Aye.
and I'm an aye, so that is unanimous. That brings us to 8.2. A consideration of a resolution to modify chapter 51 of the Tolland Town Code regarding license suspension and revocation process for adult-oriented establishments and the setting of a public hearing for October 10th, 2023. Before I kick it over to Brian, I just want to thank Counselor Luba for all the suggestions, bringing this issue of the concern to the council. It was received very warmly, and Ryan and Mr. Conti reviewed it thoroughly before providing recommended language changes.
concur. Again, as you mentioned, this was captained by Councilman Luba, and relying, heavily on someone with Juris Doctor in this type of situation is, and we're lucky to have. It refines when a license to operate an adult-oriented establishment can be revoked, and it updates the town's adjudication process. It's an old ordinance, certainly. It's not related to, we don't know of any ongoing criminal investigations or pending information at all. We've not been told anything. However, when that incident happened last summer, it afforded us the opportunity to look at the ordinance and was a glaring indication that it needs updating. So there's no pending actions in this update.
Okay. Are there any questions from council members? Councilor Luba?
well, just as a comment, I think that, as, Ms. Foley stated, that in looking at the code as it exists right now, well, first off, I think before we actually put it for, publication, I just asked Ms. Foley to go through where there's changes that have been made, which it looks like they're still, struck through on there in the blue, but we need to remove those.
Yes.
Because this was, I think, one thing that we need to toss in there. But the whole reason behind it is because the way that the code was written, essentially, it deprived the town and public safety director and the town manager and others the ability to act quickly on certain things, also tie their hands as far as when they could move to suspend or revoke. And more, I think the biggest, most glaring issue is that there was a provision put inside there which essentially rendered the entire code section useless because it stated that the aggrieved party, the licensee could file an appeal, and during that filing of appeal, there was an automatic stay of any further suspension or other actions. So essentially, we wrote a code section where all the person has to do is file an appeal, and then it's null and void essentially. With this, it still allows a process for the person to appeal, but they would do it like any other person, any other business. They would have to follow the proper procedure. They would appeal to the town council. But during that period, it would still stay suspended or temporary revocation. And then if they disagreed with the town council's decision, they could file an appeal to the Superior Court. But again, they would have to move for an injunction to have the stay imposed rather than us automatically imposing that stay on our own. And that's really the biggest thing, where this just sort of comports with most civil law in this area, where the aggrieved party would have to go to the Superior Court to move for an injunction rather than us automatically imposing that injunction on ourselves. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. One more thing, if I could, Mr. Chair. There's several businesses, the Love Tolland businesses in that block of buildings there that would fall victim should something catastrophic happen there. So specifically the asset forfeiture clause that we added there, number 8, would be really for protection of the other businesses should something happen. That's all.
All right, thank you. And just one quick clarification, the reason why we even have this chapter is because as a municipality, we have the ability to create these ordinances on our own, but have them in alignment with certain state and federal statutes. Is that correct?
Correct, and they were reviewed in that point specifically with our town attorney.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I have questions, but I'm okay waiting until we go to public hearing too. It's whatever.
No, if you want to ask it now, and then we can,
Okay,
if there's no answer, it can be prepared for the hearing.
okay, great, yeah. Is the revocation details consistent with other types of businesses? The changes that we're talking about making in terms of a suspension of a license, is that consistent with suspending other types of business licensing? Or is this unique in Tolland to just adult-oriented businesses?
I don't have a specific answer for that. There are so many different types of businesses.
Council, you do, might have an answer
Okay.
for you if you're good.
Yeah, thank you very much. That this is consistent with any time that there's a license, where if there's something which would have precluded a person from obtaining a license initially, then that's essentially where it goes back and says, if you did anything which, when you originally applied for the license, would have precluded you, then it kicks in. That's consistent with state law. It's consistent with most other licenses, where there's not a lot of businesses that require a specific license to operate within the town.
Okay,
The only thing that could really be drawn any type of similarity is if we had approved having a dispensary or something like that. Though these things are unique because they're state regulated, but the town also has the authority to regulate them on their own.
Okay.
So this is consistent with that provision.
Okay.
If that answers your
that
question.
did answer my question. Thank you.
Yeah, so in theory, if, there's not many, I think, solely adult-oriented establishments, but if there were to be, say, like, I think, Council Weaver said, if there was a dispensary established in the community, they would fall under this part of the town code.
Okay. And I know that there are some issues regarding the licensing of the existing adult-oriented business in town that they're essentially grandfathered in to some permissions. Would they be grandfathered into this change, or would this change be applicable to the current adult-oriented businesses in town?
don't have the answer to that. And I don't know if, Councilman Luba nor, Rick Conti, that might be something, to find out down the road.
Yeah,
I think that, that the way that, since this is something where that this was initially granted, or when they first appeared, this is when we created the town code section. The revision of this town code, because it's a revision and it's open up to a new town, to a new hearing, and there's an opportunity for them to come in and voice their position and everything else, that, again, I would ask, our town attorney to review that specifically on that issue, in addressing prior issues similar to this, that this would be something that the grandfathering at this point would end, because the new provision is a new town code, and so therefore it would, that they may be grandfathered in under other applicable provisions, but outside of the town code 51 provisions, especially the revocation provision.
okay. Yeah, I think it would be very helpful to know from Rick, from our town attorney, just confirmation that this would be applicable to current businesses in town, and are not grandfathered in.
Make note of that and have that question for us for the public hearing once it's set. Are there any further questions?
So just thank you, Lou, for
Yeah,
clearly all the work you did on this.
yeah. All right, that being said, I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolutions outlined and setting the public hearing for October 10th, 2023.
So moved.
So by Councilor Luba, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Murray, and then we'll do roll call vote. Councilor Yudichak,
Hi.
Councilor Luba,
Aye.
Councilor Nuccio,
Aye.
Vice Chair Regan, Councilor Khan.
Aye.
Councilor Murray.
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so that is unanimous. That brings us to item 8.3, discussion on the tax stabilization fund and consideration of a resolution to amend chapter 46A of the town code, ordinance number 96, tax stabilization fund, and the setting of a meeting for October 10th, 2023. So this was brought forward after a relatively robust conversation about financial updates and the concerns about monies from state and local taxes that get held back year after year, and concerns that were raised about the maximum amount that's allowable in the stabilization fund. So that was one area that was requested for a revision from 3 million to 1 million. And the other revision was a periodic review from the council every 5 years. There were a few questions that were submitted to Lisa Hancock, who is on tonight via Zoom. That should be in the packet. One question I didn't ask Lisa, but I'll ask now is, what was the reasoning for having funds that once we exceed the 1 million going into the unassigned fund balance?
Good evening. Sorry, I can't seem to get my video to work. I don't know what's going on, but anyway, the reasoning was because normally any excess funds that you receive in your annual budget, your general fund operating budget, usually does go back into unassigned fund balance. So, and at that point, the charter allows you to use your unassigned fund balance in various ways. And we also have our town fund balance policy. So it helps give the guidance as to how the council would want to use the money in the future based on, the charter guiding it, as well as trying to maintain our fund balance as well. So I felt when I recommended that change, that would be the best way to put the funds aside and still have, the ability to use it as you may desire. But also it all gets combined with unassigned fund balance or fund balance in any event. Even our reports, our financial reports each year, this particular fund is part of the general fund balance, even though it's segregated.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. I'll open the floor to any questions from council members. Councilor Murray.
Thank you. I have a question about the addition of language that says in the event that the fund should exceed $1 million, then any excess shall be transferred to the general fund unassigned fund balance. what point is that transfer triggered?
You mean date?
Yes,
Lisa, any idea?
Yes, that would occur at the end of the fiscal year, because that's usually when we would transfer any money into the fund if there were any excess. That's done at the end of the fiscal year, once the year is complete and you review the ordinance and follow it pursuant to the amount that would go in there. So at that point, if at June 30th, it went to 1,100,000, 100,000 would just automatically be reclassified to stay within it just would stay in the general fund. It would not go to the stabilization fund or capital non-recurring as it normally would have.
do you think it would be? Do we think it's worth stating that that happens at the end of the fiscal year in the event that the fund should exceed $1 million at the end of any fiscal year? Then the excess fund shall be transferred to the general fund unassigned fund balance. Because this could be read that at any point, if that fund exceeds $1 million, because there's no time here, that would automatically trigger that to happen. Whereas if we state it happens at the end of the fiscal year, it allows for the finance office to complete all their accounting for the year and not require them to make that transfer happen at the moment that the fund exceeds $1 million.
I don't have an issue with it having that language.
It adds a little
I
protection.
was just trying to look at it here because I thought there was something where, see, in this, if you could see where I'm putting the cursor right now, after taking into consideration known reductions in any state or non, usually this is at the end of the fiscal year. So, we could try to incorporate some sort of language if you wanted to clarify it.
I think that would be fine. We can definitely have that in mind for the hearing to update the language, so it just clearly states the fiscal year. Councilman Murray, if you have the verbiage for that, you can shoot over an email
Sure, I'll just.
to
copy
staff.
That would be great.
I just want to give you, I don't want you to be put in the position, Lisa, or anyone in your office, where suddenly you're being asked to transfer money in the middle of the fiscal year without all of your accounting done, and things could change as you explain to us regularly. So that this might give you a little bit more flexibility.
That's fine. And, normally these transfers here, the normal ones don't happen till the end of the fiscal year as well, because you have to take into account any other revenues that, if we had significant shortfalls, and even though we had the excess revenue, the way it's worded or designed is to be able to cover some of those shortfalls if we didn't have enough. So that's fine. We can incorporate that language.
Are there any other questions from council members? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the resolution as outlined in 8.3 and set the public hearing for October 10th.
So moved. We got three.
I'll second.
You take it.
So moved by Councilman Yudichak, seconded by Councilman Murray, and we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman Yudichak,
Aye.
Councilor Luba,
Aye.
Councilman Nuccio,
Aye.
Vice Chair Egan, Councilor Khan, Councilman Murray.
Aye.
And I'm aye, so that is unanimous. That brings us to 8.4, which is the consideration of a resolution authorizing Brian J. Foley, town manager, to execute a memorandum of agreement with the state of Connecticut Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection for participation in the Homeland Security Grant Program. This action modifies the town manager's name to reflect Brian J. Foley's appointment as town manager.
This is a formality. Is it every year, John, that we do this?
Every year we change. Yeah.
Yep, every year. So, and all it is a formality that allows us, as it says, to apply for grants moving forward.
Are there any questions from council members? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution outlined in 8.4.
So moved.
So by Council Murray, is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Council Yudichak, and we'll do a roll call vote. Council Yudichak,
Aye.
Council Luba,
Aye.
Council Nuccio,
Aye.
Regan. Aye. Council Khan, Council Murray,
Aye.
and I'm an aye, so that is unanimous. That brings us to 8.5, discussion of the ambulance apparatus. We also have with us tonight Chief Liddell, Deputy Chief Gojan, we have Doug, and I always put your name, Doug Raciot, I believe in the back of the mutual aid. I believe there's other members of Tolland Firearms staff on Zoom as well as needed for any questions. But pass it over to Mr. Foley to provide a summary and the information that was provided in the packet.
Sure, there's been a lot of conjecture, recently in regards to, our ambulance status here in town, brought about by, two of our ambulances going down, which was entirely brought about by the shortage of ambulances and the inability for municipalities to purchase ambulances. So bad is the problem that, Pete Buttigieg wrote a letter to, President Biden defining that problem and need, and the issue across the country. As a result of us not having the two ambulances that we currently have on order, one for, I believe, over 2 years now, and no end in sight. We are out working with two, older ambulances, as with any older apparatus, subject to, breakdown. And as a result of that, we were relying on mutual aid for a few days. I'm open to any questions.
All right, we'll open the floor to questions. Just thank you, obviously, to Chief Littell and the staff for all the answers that were incorporated in the packet. I believe it was
Yes.
provided this morning, so we have a lot of those Q&As there for anyone who has had a chance to take a look at those. But I'll open the floor to any questions.
Anything that
Councilman Yudichak.
So basically, that's created all these questions over the last few months. I first want to thank everybody that put in the time to answer all these questions. I think a lot of them I knew the answers to, but I think it's healthy for everybody to understand what's going on. So thank you to Chief Littell, your department. I know I probably put a big wrench into it the last 2 weeks. But I do think it's still an important conversation. I've said all along, I've never expected a third paid ambulance. It's just something if we could use one of the older ones for a while to see how it goes. But I just want to make that clear to everybody. So apparently I like to ask the question number one multiple times. Many questions. But we talk a lot about the census numbers. The census numbers have gone down. And I think we need to realize that not only residents in town have medical calls, it's people that come traveling through the town. It's family members that come visit, and it's also a lot of sports that happen in town. So not on top of that, we have the Santinis coming in. I forget, Tammy, how many apartments was it again? 200?
240.
240. I'm sure they won't fill up right away. A few years, 240 plus whatever people. I mean, we gotta consider that as well. I was very concerned when the two ambulances did go down. I think that I know the chief has a plan when that does happen. I wouldn't think two is a common thing that goes down, but it looks like at least one goes down a bit. And we also, I've heard from residents that it's not just the census numbers, the population in town is growing older, so we have to remember aging population, there's more calls as well. And I just have a whole bunch of random things here, so. We've also heard about different types of ambulances. I know a town manager is very interested in the van type style ambulance. As a possible option. I just want clarification on this, that, I understand you like the current type now is because, I think Sammy, you've mentioned it when we talked. It's how far we go to say Hartford. I think a lot of calls would be towards Hartford. I know I choose Hartford. The terrain in Tolland, it's a lot different than in the city. And also we don't have paramedics in town, right? So we're gonna need a second person on board if you need one in that case. So am I missing anything why you would prefer, or does it really matter to you which one you have?
Sounds like you got some good answers from some people and.
I've done a lot of homework throughout town.
You become educated.
Yes,
We are accepting applications.
if I had the guts to do it. Just sit in the medical office. So. I want to point out, I think everybody here knows, there's a lot of calls on I-84. And I am just wondering over the last couple of days, has it been busy? Because I know the report we have didn't include a lot over the week until now.
You're good, John.
Go ahead, John.
So I will be honest with you, the last 2 days were bad. It usually happens when something usually comes up in my department. So yesterday was a bad day. Obviously, we had car versus bull at 195 with an 18-year-old. Lifestar would not fly. We handled that call. And within a few minutes after that, we get a report of a tractor trailer possibly on fire on an interstate. So staff during the daytime, obviously with what we have, we're shifting vehicles. Luckily, it was not an actual fire, so I was able to secure an engine tank to secure the incident on Interstate 84, but then responded the next engine that was there backing them up to come back up to 195, to pick up the second ambulance to go to the next medical call on Woodley or down on Norwegian Ways. So it's not funny that you say the last 2 days or a couple days, but obviously this weekend was busy, but over today we had 12, 13 calls, whatever. But then 4:45 tonight, the first call went out, and we only had 3 staff members on. But then 4:45, we were handling the first call. At 4:51, the second call came in for Wood Lake, don't have staff, Vernon handled that call. And then at 4:59, the third call came in for Woodhead, that was a resident that Wellington came in and handled. So we're known in Tolland to get back-to-back calls, and when we get back-to-back, we're known just to get streamlined, crazy days. And it just recently, all that happens today, and I did nothing to jinx the system or the calls, because it was a bad 2 days of just abundance of calls. Then there's some days that you have a lull, so you can never predict it. There's times when you can run all kinds of numbers that you want, that you'll have higher numbers during the daytime, and then all of a sudden it'll be, quieter at nighttime. And then all of a sudden at nighttime, they're just running ragged and it's quiet during the day. And then you have opposites that on a Friday night to a Sunday, you could get 35 calls. You can't predict it. And obviously, like you said, there's a lot of factors that play into it. We have an aging population. We've added a couple different recent places like 100 Oak Post. We have the elderly housing at 763 at Winding River. You have Wood Lake. Wood Lake changes because it's sold recently. So calls fluctuate between that facility as well. It's not owned by ECHN now. It's a private. Then you have a couple group homes in town as well. And then a lot of the medical stuff nowadays, people are getting released faster from the hospital if they're coming home. So they're going back into the hospital within a day. There's times when we transport people and all of a sudden they get, released and they're back home. We're going back to that same house that same day, later that night. The new thing that has arisen from every community that's taxing on every department and every town around here is lip assist. So a lot of older people are having medical problems or, not having their children around because the economy, the way it is, you have both parents, both other halves, both working. There's not someone usually around to run over and assist or whatever. So once a lift assist comes in, you have to commit an ambulance over there because you have to do an evaluation and see if it's gonna be a transport or not. So those calls have gone up. The state of Connecticut recently adopted that those are now chargeable instances that you can bill for, but it still takes that rig out of service. So depending on those calls and everything else, it's gonna fluctuate your numbers. You can run numbers all day. Like you said, with the census population, your numbers are jiving back and forth with census populations, but we all know that we had a huge influx in COVID, and then we had a lull for a while. and then you had the speeding stuff, and you had the crazy stuff that happened after that, and it just fluctuates back up. But in general, the call numbers for the overall department are increasing, obviously. You know, you look at last year, I think it's one of your sheets that, don't quote me, but 1776 or something, and we're already almost at 9 something now, almost 1,000 before we reached January. So, you know, last year, I think we closed out at 2,300 and some calls. That's the combination between fire, ambulance, and rescue. The majority is medical, there's no doubt. So, as far as the style of ambulances, we've cycled and we've changed. Doug, you know, my past assistant chief is here now. We used to run a different type of E-series type of ambulances, but when we did that, we had to fluctuate the tires, and because of the weather out in town, for whatever reason, we all know that we're called the triangle in town. Whether it comes from exit 67 all the way to 69, we get the ice, we get the snow, we get the weather. But we went to a 4-wheel drive because before we were running studded tires, and, you know, we went to a 4-wheel drive chassis. When we did that, we did remounts and envision of taking those heavy duty chassis and turning those into service vehicles down the road, so you wouldn't have a service truck in the budget. Those become service trucks afterwards. But you can only do so many remounts, and we've exceeded that remount level, where now that's the problem that we're running into, because we did remounts. You're at that third cycle where now the way the economy and everything's working, those electronic pieces, those electronic items, that's the problem with one of those ambulances, is because it's all electronics, and it's that microchip, and the microchip and all those types of things are what's causing the national shortage of these chassis and these ambulances being built and processed and getting. So unfortunately, that's the technology that we're living in. Your new engine squad type of unit that you just bought last year is all electronics. And I'll be the first to look at all use and say that I don't know how to operate it. And it would take an act of Congress to sit there and spend the time. But as far as the types of ambulances, obviously we do run a heavy duty type of chassis, and you know, I try to look at the weight loads and the requirements and stuff like that, but we do have a 20-25 minute ride into there. Sometimes you might have 2 to 3 people depending on the nature and the severity of the call. And obviously we deal with a lot of trauma. The 25-minute ride, a lot of those are OEMS trauma regulations. So for us, in order to skip a local hospital where your med control is out of Rockville, East DHN, you have to call in, skip that med control, and then you have to go to a trauma center. Trauma center is obviously located in Harvard and St. Fernando, 2 level 1 trauma centers. And from there, the timeframes of all the stuff that's happening with our numbers, it's a 2-hour and 25-minute turnaround time when that ambulance goes to Harvard Hospital. And there's nothing you can do because patients are sitting in a hallway. It's a long turnaround time. So hopefully that answers most of your
It does.
questions.
Answer the what, now, let other people go, cause, I have some other things, but I just, like, I guess, do you think, I'll take that back, I'm not gonna let any of you guys go. Do you think this town needs a 30 ambulance?
We'd always have forecasted and planned for it. That was one of the reasons for the expansion of a bay, to keep the next one, so if something like this happens. Back when the merger happened in '88, we were running 1 ambulance, and we were down for a point in time as we took over Tolland ambulance back in '88. Correct me if I'm wrong or not, we went and ended up going into a 2 ambulance cycle. And rotate them on every 4 to 5 year basis, like every other community around us that does that. When you get into that cycle, then if one goes down mechanically or catches on fire or something else happens, you get a station that's destroyed by a hurricane, it's a year to get a new rig. You're not just going down to the local car shop to pick up a rig. It's a time frame. So especially now with the way the economy is, you got 2 ambulances that have been in order. I mean, October 12th will be 2 years since that, and I don't have a VIN number for you yet. And believe me, I've reached out to Congressman Courtney's office, and that started way back in April, May, and tried to push every button, and so has in a lot of other communities. But it's a national thing, and I think Brian responded to that it's a national thing. He confirmed that as well. So we're not the only one that's struggling, and obviously with what's happening in the nation right now with different types of strikes and everything else wise, that could pose a bigger problem down the road with getting parts or getting repairs and getting items. So the longer turnaround time, I won't lie to you. The items that happened with the last ambulance that broke down, don't you think I bought spare parts and they're on my shelf? Because then at least I can have a local mechanic get it back up and running versus waiting 4 to 12 weeks for that item to come in. Because it's bound to happen to the other ambulance that just happened. And we try to prepare that because even if we don't use them right now, those vehicles become service trucks. And it's bound to go, that part's bound to break or fail, we'll have it ready to get back on the road quickly. So we did put some security investments in it. That makes sense?
So, you know, I look at the chart here, and RC Vernon has a lot of calls,
Vernon's extremely busy.
extremely busy, so are we starting to see less of Vernon for mutual aid because they're so busy?
Yeah, to be a catch-22 answer, and I'll be honest speaking. Obviously, two years or so ago, we had some serious talks between the town of Vernon, the town of Bellinson and Tolland. Because Vernon was having a staffing issue versus the ambulance issues and everything else wise. They fixed the staffing issues and everything else wise, and they also ordered a few extra ambulances now. So, are they coming back in to help us now? Yeah. You know, it's one of those catch-22s that we all help each other out, whether it's Coventry, Tolland, Ellenton, Vernon, Wellington, we try to help each other out. You know, every town goes through a cycle. So Vernon does come. I don't think that the numbers are. They've dropped a lot. But, you know, obviously the numbers here, yeah, you had some ambulances down for a short period of time. And believe me, we do everything we can. I mean, the last time with the road rage incident, he could have had that ambulance down for 4 to 6 weeks because you had to order a new hood and get it painted. Fortunately, that I'm very good friends with Bill's Auto Parts, and unfortunately, our ambulance had to drive around town with the yellow hood, but we borrowed a hood from a junkyard to get the other hood painted, matched up, lettered, and then put on, but we were never out of service for more than, I think, 6 hours that day. So we do what we can to think outside the box.
Yeah, you do a great job, right? You've
Try.
done a great job. With that stuff, and I guess my last 2 questions, I really had my 6 questions. I know a lot of, I guess, this is just a discussion, I know we're not voting on anything tonight or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I know there's a lot of talk about not enough staff, if you had a 3rd ambulance, you didn't have staff or a place to put it, okay? But I always think we gotta talk about if we have the need, and then if we need the need, then we have to figure out those next 2 steps.
And we discussed that, I discussed that, I can answer that, right? Sure.
Of course, John.
So we discussed this week, obviously, you know, you're trying to finish up Station 340's firehouse. And obviously, with that whole firehouse project, we're trying to obviously go after what we can do with the extra funding to go into Station 140 and 440 and make the most reasonable thing. But we will have the Station 340 and Gary will have that 3rd bay and everything else wise. And then moving forward, we don't know where we're gonna be yet with Station 140, whether that's gonna come back with the concrete. We just talked about it this week. And looking at, you know, the bay space and everything else, that's your biggest firehouse. It's, you know, it's a 3-bay back-to-back firehouse. You have the space, but yeah, you can put an ambulance in between here or there, but if you have a ladder truck and you have everything else that's at those stations as well, you can only put so much back-to-back. That's why one of the plans is to extend those bays out, because the apparatus have increase in size since 1970s, 80s, 90s. So, yeah, we would obviously take a service vehicle or something else and have to move outside to house that ambulance or house that vehicle.
It's not impossible,
Nothing's possible in our world.
I know, I just wanna,
We make magic out of
there's a
it.
lot of questions out there and they're good questions.
Yeah, and like I said, I know it's been a long time, but obviously stations are always open. October's Fire Prevention Month, we're having an open house, feel free to stop in.
I don't think you want me to stop in.
I would never, I would never, I would never say that.
Made a lot of enemies. But
Because
that's all I, have for now.
All right, I'm actually gonna bounce off of a couple of your comments just to clarify with you, chief. In general, you think it's easier to repair and get parts for the ambulances? I know, just as an example, the council's been added to the chain for when the fire apparatuses, the engine tanks are offline and online, and when repairs are being done, when they're scheduled. Do you
Yes.
find that it's probably more prudent for the town, if we were to move forward with, say, or the next council, to have a third ambulance? It would be easier to grandfather one of the older ones, get the parts for it, and have that one be kind of serviced until it, meets its useful life and needs to be fully decommissioned, versus, trying to acquire a third new one that will be in alignment with, what you're currently procuring.
Right, so I've looked nationally, obviously, we were close back, I think, the boss and I and a few others were looking back in the end of April, May, June, or whatever, looking at nationally wise what's out there. There's nothing right now that you can just call up and say, hey, you got that out of your lot, I want that. Most of the ones that have, that are out there are either newer chassis with, roughly 40,000 miles on them, but they were remounts of another box. So you're going down the same road by buying another remount box that within 8 years, 7 years, you'll have that same electronic part, you'll have that same failure. It might not be the mechanical aspect of it, but that electronic in today's day and age is unforeseeable, unforecastable. You can't, tell where that's gonna go, because things upgrade and things change so much that I mean, I searched eBay for parts. So it's hard to say, but if you were to cancel, we looked at everything. If you were to cancel your orders now, you go back into the pipeline of a new order. We're almost there with one. Obviously, I think I might make a switch, not that you guys will pay attention to 540, 640's numbers, but obviously the problem child would be the one that would get rotated first, because that's the electronic issues, and I'm not sending that to Florida for $60,000 of electronic work to get repaired, because I don't think that's money worth spent.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then speaking of rotations, company, which I could ask you a question, I believe I have the answer, but while 340 is down, you're rotating all the vehicles and apparatus between the remaining stations, because obviously, you.
sorry, I was just looking at that.
No, that's okay.
And I had to, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. So with station 340 obviously down right now for being rebuilt, the
We
trucks.
timed it right because we
Yeah.
got a truck out for refurb.
Okay,
So it was perfect timing that that truck was out for refurb. We're trying to get the specs done on the other truck to come to you guys to send out for specs. And another truck will go back out now for refurb. So I'm in the midst of that timing right now, which worked out well for us. And then we were also fortunate to get the squad, and we sold that other engine tank. So the only thing that I'll be in a loop line right now with is obviously the ladder truck.
yeah. So generally right now, storage isn't an issue because of that.
No, but down the road, I mean, once I clear that, once you receive your ladder truck coming up, I gotta move some things around. We're hoping some people will start biting at it's out there for sale.
Yeah.
So. Like, yeah, but then again, you could have something hysterically happen, like
Yeah.
Station 4 got struck by lightning 4 or 5 weeks ago, and that took a hard hit. You never know what could, generally happen.
Right, and I think that covers it for my question. So I'll open the floor to Councilor Murray.
Thank you very much to both Brian and John and everyone else who was involved in answering these questions. I've been in your shoes when the legislative body asks a lot of questions all at once, and understand how much work it is to get all these answers together. So thank you very much for the obvious effort that went into this. I have a few maybe very quick questions, and then much larger, more difficult. So let's start with the easy things. Do we know how many calls came in when both ambulances were down 2 weeks ago?
You think 2 weeks ago?
Well, yes, because this all started when about 2 weeks ago, we found out that both ambulances were down at the same time. Do we know about how many calls came in during that period of time where they were both down?
Thought that was one of your questions that I answered it, but
She's more defined. I don't think we have that, John, but we can find it out.
I can get that. I don't, and on a ballpark. 6 to 10 calls, I mean, because East Windsor covered, and I think they only handle, probably a dozen calls. I mean, Doug runs the 911 center, Carl runs the numbers, but probably a dozen calls, because I think East Windsor had 2 or 3 calls when they, covered us from that time period, and then we were very fortunate at the same time period to borrow Wellington's ambulance.
Yep.
And then I kept Wellington's as a backup.
Yeah.
Because the other ambulance went to Monaco Ford, for the flywheels, that we thought it was a SAR issue, all that, I think. So we, maybe a dozen,
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you. On the first question that was asked, it says from the end of February 2023 through September 15th, it details that ambulance 540 was down for 3,004 hours. My very, very rough math is that time period between February 2023 and September 15th, that is a total of 44,800 hours. If the ambulance was down for 3,000 of those 4,800 hours, that's 62.5% of the time. Does that sound about right to you? That we had an ambulance down this year for 62.5% of the time?
Is that hours of operation?
hours of operation, yeah. And now I would say that, is that 62%? Good.
That's a little scary. Okay, this is leading me to my big question. So thank you. One of these questions is what is the cost to maintain 3 ambulances, insurance, location, staff, blah, blah, blah. And the answer was that the estimated cost to keep a third ambulance when the 2 new ones come in is an additional $5,500. My gut says that's low. If the answer is that.
I answered that on a best foreseen guess. The reason I answered that is if we were gonna buy a newer chassis, third ambulance wise, you
Oh.
probably wouldn't have the maintenance issue. But if you end up keeping another one, obviously mechanically, it would probably be higher, and you're absolutely right. I apologize.
Okay, no, thank you, that's great.
Does that make-
Yes, I now understand your assumption, that makes sense. Okay,
Just
thank you.
because I think Brian answered one other question that said we were trying to, but that vehicle was sold, so does that make sense?
Yep, thank you, I appreciate it. So thank you for those answers to the few things I wanted to clarify from the questions and answers. Thank you, Colleen, for asking all of these questions and kind of getting to the crux of the matter. I think it's pretty clear that there are a number of people on town council and in our community who are pretty concerned about the ambulance situation in town. We want to have a safe community, and as community members want to feel safe, right? Nobody wants to have a ride on an ambulance. I hear it's not a lot of fun. But if we need it, everyone wants to know that there is an emergency response available to us to meet any emergency medical needs that we might have. I understand, and it's been reiterated a number of times, it's pretty clear. The magic ambulance producers are not going to just give us one tomorrow, right? We have 2 ambulances on order. These new ambulances are ordered per our replacement policy. Like, we're doing everything right here in town about trying to get a new ambulance. But we are faced with a national crisis in terms of supply. So the big policy question is, what can we do? What can we as a council, we as a town do to ensure that Tolland has adequate equipment to ensure community safety? This is a very large question. And I understand there isn't an easy answer, but I think today you have 7 members of council sitting here saying, we have some concerns. There have been some very valid concerns raised. There's no easy answer. What potential solutions should we be considering as we do a 6-month, 12-month, 18-month outlook where we don't have a new ambulance coming in as we had expected?
So, thank you. Everything being discussed tonight is conjecture. Absent of forensic safety and fiscal analysis by a third-party professional that specializes in this sort of thing, as we've done in 2010, it's all conjecture. My recommendation and answer to your question is to revisit that and have somebody do a forensic, fiscal, and public safety analysis of the 2 ambulances. I think we'd all agree if we had some backing of that, it'd be easier to move forward
How much,
or not move forward.
how much does that cost?
I would be happy to explore that for you. We did not look into that, but
Fair?
I'm happy to look into it. Given that we do have the fund, the ambulance fund, I think it would be appropriate to use the ambulance. I have to look. Ambulance fund money to examine the ambulance fund need or the ambulance needs.
Yeah, and I think, we had some unspent funds for this past fiscal year, that went back into the general fund, that maybe the council would be willing to allocate, not having any idea how much this costs. I don't know how other members of council feel, but I would be very interested in asking the town manager to explore how much it would cost to do that.
And I'd be happy to do that. And I can tell you that in the neighborhood play, it was $5,000 for the DPW
Okay,
invasion there. So I'm happy to do the same. My guess it would be more with the data analysis.
Sure.
As you are well aware, but that's my solution.
I appreciate that. I think that having as you say, an expert third-party analysis, do give us that information, I think would be very helpful. I don't know how other members of council feel. The other piece to that puzzle that I still am not sure I truly understand is about staffing. Because ambulances are very nice on touch truck day, and it's cool to bring the kids there. But if there's no one to operate the ambulance when there's a medical emergency, we could have 27 of them. That doesn't matter. We need to understand what the staffing needs would be to ensure public safety. That's, again, I do not expect anyone to have that answer today. And from previous conversations, I am very aware that there is, again, a not unique to Tolland situation where we have fewer volunteers than we've ever had in the past, where there's a payroll issue, where there are other ambulance companies paying a much higher rate than we're able to pay in town, et cetera. I understand that there are a bunch of impediments here. Having third-party analysis to give us a clear picture, I think would be very helpful. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murray. Actually, I'm just gonna make a quick comment and then jump to Councilman Nuccio. My personal opinion is if we do go forward with the study, I think it should just be comprehensive of all public safety. Rather than just focusing on the ambulances. If it was 5,000 for DPW's fleet and staff, I think they're not entirely apples to apples, but it's probably a similar volume of fleet and staffing. And I think a lot of the questions that were asked of DPW in terms of their staffing needs, their apparatus needs, I think should be applied in the same public safety as probably the second, if not top, both cost in terms of vehicles and maintenance for the town from a capital perspective. So that's my recommendation, is go beyond the ambulance study, have an updated study for all public safety to make sure we can have the right staffing and apparatus needs, especially with all the changes going on. But with that, Councilman Nuccio, the floor is yours.
Thank you. My video is disabled again. I don't know if you guys actually need to see me or not. But
No worries. It's always good to see you, but
you don't have to, right? Okay. So I just have a couple of questions from kind of what Katie just said there. John, I have going back in my notes, because y'all know I keep them, every budget conversation going back to 2020. And in 2020, 2021, and 2022, when I'd asked about a third ambulance, every time I wrote down the response that we don't have the place to store it, to operate it out of, and there was a staffing issue, obviously. If what I heard was correct, you're saying that we are going to have a place to store it now, but we would be displacing something else, or are we still don't have a place to store it?
Future plans of the firehouses all had an extra bay. Station 4 was supposed to have an extra bay, Station 3 was supposed to have an extra bay, and then Station 140 was supposed to be expanded bays. The expanded bays in between would allow the room for the service trucks, but the extra bays at Station 3 and 4 would have housed either your trailers or your third ambulance.
So we don't have a place right now, though.
Back before we were doing that, we were trying to finalize the contract for the firehouses, and then obviously we voted and some things got changed, and obviously prices, and we've had to scale back some things like any other project.
Okay. Second, from what I understand, and I believe what Katie had said also too, Katie and I are once again, we find ourselves on similar pages here. We have 2 ambulances right now that we have ordered that we don't even have VIN numbers on, right? But they've already been approved and out there and ordered. So we don't have any kind of update as to when we're going to be getting those, correct?
I just emailed the vendor again today. I think I sent the last email to Brian, I think 2 weeks ago, when these questions were coming out, just to see if we had a VIN or a approximate time. But no, your ambulances were ordered in 2021.
Okay. Yep. And nothing yet. So I think what we're seeing here is just kind of a conflation of like really just a bunch of bad stuff coming together. So we know we've already ordered 2 new ambulances. We haven't come anywhere close to getting them yet. When we get the 2 new ambulances, I know at one point my note said we were talking about taking the body, keeping just the body and making one into a plow, possibly selling one. So it looks like we may have the opportunity to keep one of these other ambulances around as a backup third one. I think the fact that both of our ambulances are down right now is just, or we're down, is just unfortunate timing. And I don't think this is something that we as a community would expect to see going forward, especially with 2 brand new ambulances. So, I mentioned multiple times that, ambulance is the only thing that brings in revenue. I'm not opposed to a third ambulance if we've got the data that backs it up, that we actually have in-town calls that substantiate it. But I've also been very vocal about the fact, the mutual aid that we're doing in other towns, if we're not seeing reciprocity in the numbers, like, I don't love the idea that Tolland taxpayers are paying to go to Vernon and Coventry and every place else, if we're not seeing like equal amounts back and forth. So with that, I think what Brian and Katie have just said, and Steve also mentioned too, I'd like to see somebody come in and review this and look at it. Looking at the basic numbers with 2 ambulances, looking at Ellington has higher population than us. They have 2 ambulances. And just looking at the other towns around us, maybe 2 with a backup just in case is the right thing. Maybe 3 is, but we don't know that without the data, other than just conjecture and everybody trying to kind of assume what the town really needs. But I would like that review, Brian, to also look at the amount of calls that we're doing in mutual aid. And also, I've just got some concerns around the questions and answers that were on here. I know the state just updated the rates for ambulances, but simple math, if I look at the expected calculation per call and the number of calls that we do, I would expect to see well over $1 million in revenue from ambulance calls. And I don't think we've ever seen that. I don't think that account has anywhere near those numbers. So I'd like that review to look at calls, mutual aid calls, possibility of revenue, when we're not collecting revenue, is that from town, from out of town, and just really understanding. So we're not making a decision here based off of passion or opinion, but the actual data to see whether or not it's the right decision. for Tolland to have a third ambulance. Just because, I'm seeing differences in what my notes say from the last 3+ years to what we're talking about tonight. So that's my ask.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Miccio. And then you probably see it in the packet. I think question 17 has the data about the mutual aid. Looks like it's 1,345 calls into neighboring towns, and over the past 5 years, we've received, is that correct, Chief? 800 ambulance calls into Tolland. So basically, it's kind of like a 1.5 for every call that we go out, or every call that comes into town. We're responding to about 1.5 outbound.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm also wondering on that, Steve, though, is for those 1,300 that were out, how many
Yeah.
times are we out on calls and then mutual aid has to come and answer a call for Tolland? Like,
Yeah.
how many times is there a crossover where we might be in another town and then not have somebody here in Tolland to respond and have to have some other town come in and pick up the call because we're somewhere else?
So just keep in mind that your numbers will fluctuate, especially over the last 2 to 3 months. You've had almost every hospital on major diversions. You had a major cyber attack at one of the local hospitals. We had diverted all those patients. So your patients all went to the city and your turnaround times were that double. When you get your turnaround times that double, that means that you don't have your ambulances. That means your mutual aid coming here. If we're coming back from the city and they're doing the same thing, we're going to their town.
Yes.
I understand that, but I don't think that's what we can expect from a regular. Like, I don't think we're gonna regularly expect Rockville, Manchester, and all these hospitals to be hacked, right? So there's always gonna be outliers, right? That's what I think an independent consultant would maybe be able to tell us. There will always be an outlier, but I don't think we plan based on the outliers. At least, I wouldn't, but I think that's something that we can figure out from an independent consultant.
All right, thank you, Councilman Miccio. Councilor Luba?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Again, I mean, everyone's already said it, and I'll agree with it as well. I'd like to see this assessment and analysis done. I know that what we've been saying, and Chief, you've been saying it, you just mentioned it about how there had to be diversions from local hospitals into Hartford Hospital and other, or St. Francis or wherever, based upon issues. Based upon what I'm seeing within the medical system and with other projections I'm seeing, we're seeing a consolidation of a lot of services into Hartford Hospital, into St. Francis, and mainly in Hartford Hospital, where that Hartford Hospital has been taking over a lot of the smaller community hospitals. Wyndham Hospital, which used to be a large hospital, is now essentially an urgent care only that has no capability for any type of surgical intervention. And that the same thing with Rockville Hospital. So I think that the fact that we are, saying that, well, we're being diverted and we had to respond to Hartford, I think Hartford's gonna be the main place that we're gonna be going forward. I think within the next 2 to 3 years, that's gonna be it. I think that the local hospitals aren't gonna be doing any type of emergency services whatsoever, are essentially gonna be maybe minor level urgent care and outpatient or, outpatient treatment type of stuff. So I think that's something that we need to take into account. And I think that's something that really needs to be taken a deep dive look at. I mean, I know that if for whatever assessments that we're doing right now, that it's a crystal ball. We can't really say what's gonna happen, but given the trend where over the past 6 years, you've seen the huge consolidation and huge shutdown, same thing down in New London, dealing with the Norwich and New London and law enforcement from down there. Same type of thing. We're seeing a lot of things that are closing down, and I think that's something we need to look at. So I guess that's a long way of saying that we need to get an assessment done. We really get a need assessment, and then we need to come up with what are we gonna do? I think everybody's already said it. We're waiting for 2 ambulances. We don't know when they're gonna get here. What's the urgent answer? What is the thing that we need for that stopgap answer right now? Because we've been waiting 2 years, probably wait at least another year or 2 years to get those ambulances, the way things are going. So, and even then, they're going by the standards of what we had back in 21. Who's to say that when we get them, that they're even gonna be up to standard at that time? So what is the answer? I think that's really that's a bottom line answer for me, is what are we going to do? I need like a 6-month answer. I need a 1-year answer. I need a 5-year answer. And I think that's really what, that's what I'm asking for right here, is having been in, putting in terms of overseas operations. I need to know when the enemy is coming at me right now. I need to be able to address it within the first 24 hours to stop the issue, within a month to correct the issue, and 6 months to combat the issue. And so that's really what we need right now, and that's what I'm looking for. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Counselor Luba. Are there any other comments or questions or actually?
Yeah, I don't know, John or something.
John or Sadie, you guys good? Good. All right. You're good.
Yes, I figured it. Now, this is a survey or whatever we're calling it, fancy thing.
Shuffle.
I think it's okay, but I'm really concerned on how that company is picked. Is that something that there's gonna be multiple options that the future council can look at? Is it gonna go out for bid? It is different than the public works department. And I think the fire department should have, and probably dispatch should have some say and like you said, Steve, people should, from those departments, should definitely have absolutely some say in it, and we can't just base it again on census. You have to base it on mutual aid. I mean, I know this one from 10 years ago doesn't talk anything about those things, so I think I would only feel comfortable with something like that if the town manager agrees to something similar to what I just said.
Yeah, no, I think we could definitely have Mr. Foley speak with mutual aid and other communities that have conducted a similar study, find some resources.
I'm open to recommendations.
Yeah, can bring those back to council to,
If,
do a resolution or authorize the approval of a study and, verify what funds would be used to conduct that study. So I think that'd be perfectly reasonable. If it's not done within this term, certainly can be brought forward to the next council and say, this was the recommendation of the last council, we took some time to work on it and bring it back to them and we're just absolutely. So I think that's clearly an option. I
I'm saying that we're saying this is an emergency right now, but then we're kicking the ball down the, this is something where I understand and I completely understand. We want to make sure that there's somebody that is a consultant, but I think it's something that there's been other towns that have done this. And if there's a recommendation from a town that's done a similar study, because all we're doing is delaying it, and we're talking about how urgent this thing is.
Yeah.
But if we're gonna say the next council is gonna address it in November, December, that's 3 months down the 3 months down the road before there's any action on it. Is this something we need action on now, or are we comfortable with the way things are right now? And I don't have the answer for that.
I can help.
Okay,
I don't think we have a choice.
right.
When we're scanning for used ones. He identified one and was gone before we could pull the trigger.
Right.
To get a third one in here, because knowing that there's a proclivity now for them to break down. Our only option now is to replace. He plans very well for mutual aid, be it from towns or be it from a public service like AMR or Manchester. So that there's options. The only thing we can do now is replace and maintain as best as we can manage, and I have confidence in them. That I had confidence before. I knew that public safety wasn't at risk, and I don't believe it is now. And that's our plan until we get these 2 new ambulances in. Is repair as needed, maintenance, and then scan for a possible third used one. I'd be open to buying a third used one in the meantime, and then to lease them off when new ambulances come in.
Thank you.
Come on,
Yeah, no, I was gonna say the council, sorry, it's really quick, council, but I agree, if it can be sooner, better, but I obviously want to make sure we're methodical and in selecting something and bring it back to council and not have it be too rushed or have something missing, so.
Prague would have,
Yeah,
a list of consultants that we could, likely, use. So that's who I would go to.
then sorry, back, council, you get a check and then we'll scan the rest of the council.
I'm a little troublemaker, but I couldn't help but notice the chief's head shook. When we talked about, when he brought up ACE analysis.
No, I'm shaking with my kids having an issue at home, sorry. I'm just
All right, I didn't know.
I don't need this right now, my texting, I just picked them up from my
I
school.
didn't know if the timing of it was perfect. I mean, are you okay, I guess, with, I asked Scott the same thing at the end of his.
Yeah, if I can speak frankly.
Yeah,
I mean,
I want you to.
as far as the studies, we've always, if you look at the 2 studies, we've always tried to run them back to back 10 years. We ran one in 98, ran in 2010. We had, I think, before Mr. Orton left, through the idea, I believe, we had budgeted right then for that. Third study, because it was going into that next year level wise, but we didn't, it wasn't, it didn't go forward. But obviously, we're in different times in today's across every community. And like you said, it's just, something to look at, and obviously, we're here to work with everybody. I mean, we'll take direction and guidance and help where we can get it.
Yeah, the COVID gap, I think, and even just the changing of the town managers, where we're outgoing, the uncertainty there, I think also impacted the focus on it.
Yeah,
So
the COVID,
I think it was overdue.
everything's played a real factor, and we're all, we have a circle of pie in town that we're all, trying to split up among all the entities in town, so we'll sit in line, take our turn.
I think I was just gonna say one other, thing, if we're gonna do this study, we can also use Brian and Tammy, the potential of the opera funds instead of using the ambulance fund money. So, yeah, so you don't burn out there and help.
Yep. Mr. Khan?
Not since you work for 9/11, whatever, 9/11 center, whatever it is, but once the call comes in for 9/11, or 9/11, rather than ambulance or whatever it is, what do you, I don't know, how did it work? Does it go to, let's say, Lakeville, do they have to come to a Tolland, or do they go to, any other?
All of the EMS dispatching and fire dispatching that occurs, all of the 911 calls come into the center on Tolland Green. If Tolland's ambulances are available, those are the ones that are dispatched. The computer aided dispatching package that we have has Tolland divided into 5 geographical zones, and based upon those zones, there is a list of mutual aid resources that are the closest available that then get dispatched.
In the way that, my only concern is Tolland, I don't care about, that's my opinion.
No, but speaking specifically of Tolland. If Tolland's ambulances are unavailable, the next 2 ambulances to come in from a mutual aid perspective are set through the geographical zoning process that we have. So you're not gonna send a Vernon ambulance all the way over to, South River Road, for example. You're gonna send the Wellington ambulance there first. Based upon sections of town, dictates what mutual aid ambulances come in. If Tolland's ambulances are either tied up on calls or out of service, for preventative maintenance and or broken down. Up to and including commercial services down the line as well.
The reason I'm asking that, my understanding is the second, what's the second station we have on?
One ambulance is at station 240 here on Rhodes Road, the second one is over at Lake Road.
Crystal Lake. Crystal Lake's, my understanding is Crystal Lake is, 90% their call is to the alcohol. Am I wrong?
90% of calls for Crystal Lake.
They headed toward the next town.
Crystal Lake's ambulance is the busiest in our town. The reason being is that's the one that's staffed at nighttime with volunteers, obviously, and that's the first one that goes to Wood Lake. And usually there's an abundance of calls at Wood Lake and Simpson Lake Road, which is right down the road. But if a Vernon call comes in, yes, that'd be the ambulance that would be dispatched to Vernon.
Okay. Second question is the, I would say assessment. As police say that he wants to do a study. I think I agree with that. Your opinion that 2010 when we did the study, there it was a totally different timing. But now it's about what, 13 years later? I think we got majority of our population is 65 and over. And they are older, they need more attention, whatever it is. I think, to me, since we have 4 stations and 2 numbers, it doesn't make sense to me. Either we are here to put the fire on goddamn burn house, to save life. I think we need more public safety. That to me, and assessment and study, whatever it is. Those people are going to work on what we provide them. They don't have a crystal ball that they're going to see something. Whatever Brian or you are going to provide them, if you want to hold something data back, you can hold it back. But they're going to work on that and they're going to suggest you that. So there should be a little bit more common sense that we need something. And it's a public safety. It's a people of Tolland. It's not something we are talking about Ashford or whatever it is. We are talking about people of Tolland. We have to. We need something. And if we cannot provide it, you're in the same boat with the Troop C. And go with that. Okay. We have to, we have to break it up. One way or the other way. I don't think so. We are on the back, beyond the ages of camel or donkey. So I either find something or if not, prepare something because it's like, you know what? Next couple of years, Centennial is gonna be up. What are you gonna do then? Do you have a plan for? I think you should work on it, that I don't care about what town manager says, whatever it is, but I'll say public safety is first. If you want to save some money, to me, it doesn't make sense. My common sense says we need a 3rd ambulance or 4th ambulance, whatever it is to cover our assets. And we need that. If you can find a ladder truck in Pennsylvania, I think you should have find a 3rd ambulance. I don't need a ladder truck. I need a 3rd ambulance or 4th ambulance. That's my say. And that's more common sense than ladder truck to do a study. I'm not in favor of study. You know what? They say common sense. Open your eyes. Take a look. What do we need? And just do it. Why should we rely on that party? He doesn't know that it's not in the party. He doesn't know the people. He doesn't know what's going on. I can tell you everything else. I got $10 in my pocket and $5 in this pocket. What am I hiding? I'm hiding a lot of things. I'm not telling the truth. So it's like, you know what? No. That study was done in 2010. That's history. Can't change. And we have to change. We have to follow the time. Thank you.
That's it.
Best I can, sir.
Thank you, Chief. Any other comments or questions from council members? All right, seeing none, so Brian, so we'll get back to you or we'll get back to us about reaching out to CROG and resources. Yeah, Councilman Chen.
I just, if we're good, Brian, I really want, a couple, I think the council should see at least a couple options.
The implication, clearly by what Sammy just said, and what you're saying is that I'm gonna skew the report of any consultant. Just, that's the fear. I'm happy to provide you as many consultants as you'd like and pick. You said I'm gonna withhold information. If you don't trust me to pick a consultant, I'm happy to have.
No, sorry. Council to check his support Councilor Khan, so I just need to let whatever questions he has to Brian clarify, but.
Brian, I think you're taking it wrong. I mean, I think it's fair, it's a big deal. I've looked at this study, I mean, I agree, I mean, a 3rd ambulance makes sense, I don't need to spend all of the money, just to tell us we need it, but if that's what we're gonna do, I think it's fair to let the fire department dispatch and council be part of that discussion.
Agree, and they would be.
All right, well, I'm just, you're getting all upset because I made a suggestion,
I'm
and I
not
don't
upset.
appreciate.
I don't get upset.
Well, you did. I don't appreciate you saying that we're accusing you of not trusting you.
He said I was gonna withhold information.
Well, then you said me too. I never said it, so.
But you're saying that And the decision should be left with me. I'm fine with it. I'm not upset.
Sounds good. So Brian's not upset. We're gonna get some recommendations. We're gonna come back to the next meeting with some options and funding sources to conduct a comprehensive study. It sounds like, at least based off the consensus from council members in the room and on Zoom, so. Not seeing any further discussion, we'll move over to 8.6, appointments to vacancies on various municipal boards and commissions. I'll entertain a motion to approve the appointments in 8.6A and 8.6B.
So moved.
Second.
So by Councilor Lubin, second by Councilor Murray. Seeing no further discussion, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman Yudichak,
Aye.
Councilor Luba,
Aye.
Councilor Nuccio. No, that's not you.
Aye.
Alright, Vice Chair Regan. Aye. Councilor Khan. Councilor Murray.
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so that's unanimous. That brings us to 9, old business, which there is none. Item 10, report of the town manager. Any updates from your end since the last report?
Yes. I'll start with the trooper contract. The legal affairs at desk was unable to write up an MOU. Although they were in favor of us doing an MOU. I reached out to them. I think I told you this last time, and I offered to write the MOU. I did. The MOU contains information or MOU outlines our need to have a quarterly crime report from the resident trooper to council. And we'll work on scheduling that. The crime report will have basic data on burglaries, auto theft, larcenies, car breaks, and traffic enforcement is what I've asked for. It will also have information about staffing. At this point, you know, as far as the crime report, we get very little information from the troop, and they have the ability to obviously provide more. As far as staffing, they recently made this residence trooper change. The town was not made aware that there was a vacancy, and the town was not involved in the process. That is inconsistent with what happens in other resident troopers towns. So I've defined that in the MOU. In order to have a school resource officer, the town has to go through a certification process. The MOU outlines a process that will involve some assistance from the resident trooper's office, but mostly done by the town staff. Again, you already asked me about this. The report went out to the vineyards. We took a tour of the Connecticut water facility last week, myself and Ellington leadership. It was fantastic. It was a fantastic display of how modern and how well prepared that facility is. To get clean water to our residents, but also in the event of emergency or stress to the system. While there, they asked me about the sale of our Connecticut or our water system here in town. I recused myself from that process. That's the process between the Water Commission and Connecticut Water. So I didn't have much of an answer for them. Regarding the greens and the Tolland Green and the ADA walkway, we are in contact with the archaeological company that did it in 2016 when they came through to do 195. And that is progressing. Dave, we sent our plans over. They're going to get back to us. Dave is going to look at the green and see what's already been disturbed by, be it for utilities, construction, or whatnot, and provide that to the archaeological company. I attended the vets meeting this week, the Veterans Recognition Committee meeting, in regards to their place on the green as well, and work through some plans with them. They provided some rough drawings there. They have some final decisions that they have to make in that process. You see that we have some job postings out to include an administrative assistant. We are losing some great people especially people with a lot of knowledge here in the town. And that's Lynn, our administrative assistant, and obviously our beloved librarian. But the application process or the applications received have been robust, and we are going to have good candidate pools for both. As mentioned earlier, the Route 74 project, the bridge repair or new bridge going over the river out there is getting ready to get underway. There has been some concerns about its effect on buses throughout the process. Pete Straza, he's been in all the meetings. I was glad to hear that he's been all the meetings. Walt did have a question. He reached out to me. I vetted it out with Scott and Chief Lytle. I think we should be able to come to some pretty good solutions there, hopefully. Some good events in town coming up, obviously the Harvest Fest. There's a Democratic and Republican event to help the vets at the lodge coming up next month, I believe, or in 2 months. And there's also a trick or treat trail that they're gonna do from right down here on Old Post Road through the woods and Crandall's, where businesses give away candies and such to kids that walk that trail, which should be sounds pretty cool. It's kind of looks like a decent trail for a Halloween event, basically from right here on Old Post over to Lions Field. Our traffic authority, Scott Lappin, and I went out to the old Stafford Road intersection with 195, where there's been a couple of accidents into a home there. The improvements went up today. And then we have some future improvements. The main improvements were chevrons. Obvious chevrons. The chevrons, I say they reflective arrows in your face as you're driving down Old Stafford Road. If you look at the line of sight, we did some analysis and also contacted an external traffic engineer.
What about like a brick wall? I mean, that thing's been hit like 5 times.
A brick wall doesn't help. Right, it helps them, it doesn't help us. So yes, and they are doing that, and I believe they won't have any problem with the commission if they already didn't get it approved. Thank you. The dual use, Crandall's courts, tennis and pickleball, we're trying to have a grand opening event. Hopefully you'll all be invited and attend. We're just having a little hard time pinning down the exact timeline. My guess would be, within the month, and that's all I have. If anyone has any questions.
Councilman?
I do. I want to go back to the state trooper contract. So first of all, I would like to say thank you very much for being so incredibly proactive about this. For me, I didn't really recognize the room for improvement until you pointed it out. I just wanted to clarify, and again, I'm sure you have this under control and I just missed it, but I just wanted to clarify, when we get reports like these quarterly reports, are we gonna be able to differentiate between what our resident state trooper responds to and deals with versus what Troop C deals with? Or are those things so interconnected that there's no way to pull those apart?
Okay, so yes, they're very interconnected. As far as a burglary, I don't care if the resident trooper responds or someone from Troop C, I need to know all that data.
Yeah.
In relation to traffic enforcement and speed enforcement, which I also asked for in the MOU, I don't care about I-84, and that's in all capital letters on there, although much more eloquently stated than that. I want to know about traffic and speed enforcement in the town of Tolland. So that's kind of the dichotomy I draw there.
Okay.
I also put in a request there that not just those few crimes, I also want to be made aware of issues to public safety and public health, such as overdoses, suicides, or any ongoing prevalent narcotics issues in town. And then the staffing thing, again, they'll notify Chief Lytle, who's our public safety director, and myself to be involved in the process. Other towns like Ellington go to the interviews, you have to ask questions, that sort of thing. So these are some minimum things that we didn't have here that I'm just trying to bring up to speed.
Awesome. So again, thank you very much for that. I certainly look forward to the first quarterly report.
Well, they didn't say yes yet.
Oh, okay. Well, I have full confidence that we will get at least some serious improvement. So yes, again, you've been keeping us very well in the loop on this every single meeting. So I look forward to the next update when they say yes. I think that was it. Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Any other questions for Brian for the town manager update? All right, seeing none, we'll go to item 11, adoption of minutes. I'll begin a motion to approve the September 12th, 2023 minutes as outlined in 11.1 and 11.2.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilman Yudichak. And I'll do a roll call vote. Seeing no further discussion, Councilman Yudichak.
Aye.
Councilman Luba.
Aye.
Councilman Nuccio.
She's trying to mute.
She got her camera back,
Yes.
but she couldn't.
Aye. I know, I
Thank you.
can't have both at the same time. I'm not a trusted member.
Vice Chair Regan. Aye. Counselor Khan.
Aye.
Counselor Murray.
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so that's unanimous. That brings us to item 12, correspondence to council.
Right. There were 8 email communications that came in between September 13th and today. 2 regarding sidewalks on the green. 3 regarding building electrification policies. Sounds tough. Did you get that, Lisa? Building electrification policy. One, end hate across the state. One regarding clean school buses and one regarding clean ground.
Thank you, Counselor Murray. That brings us to item 13, chairperson's report. So the final chair hour of this term is Wednesday, October 4th, from 6:30 to 7:30 at the library. You know, looking forward to whoever takes over the reins, might be able to realign the first Thursdays, or if they want to stick with the Wednesday evenings, or even change up the location, they do so. I think it's a great opportunity to meet with residents, even if it's only 1 or 2, you get some good conversations out of folks. CROG met last week and started the process of the executive director Matt Hart's review with feedback ongoing. And then tomorrow there's a policy board meeting with action items on economic development strategy, strategic playbook for goals, actions, and initiatives, fiscal year 22-23 grant spending report, and several other items of business that will be taking action on and discussing. And that's it for me. So move on to item 14, communications and petitions from council members. Councilman Yudichak.
Tammy was there as a rep for the Miracle Field, so sorry, I never stopped and said hi to Tammy, but Sammy and I were there as well, and it was great. Can't speak for others, but it was bittersweet. Not having it here, but it is what it is, and it's great that they'll be down the road, and as long as the kids get to enjoy themselves playing, that's really all that matters. But you guys have to like go stop by it. It's pretty amazing, and how quickly it got pulled together, and it happened to be a beautiful day that day too. So I just wanted to share that with the council that it was really good.
Yeah, no, I was driving by it probably every other week or every week at least once and seeing the progress that they did a great
Yeah,
job.
they did a really good job.
Yeah.
And, yeah, and that was well attended too, right, Sammy? It was a good amount of people that went, and
Definitely it was a nice day and everybody enjoyed it.
yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
That's all I really have.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah. Oh,
Sammy.
Sammy.
Probably there would be the last words of my term, because I don't care. I don't care about, we talk about money. How much money, ambulance makes money or whatever it is, but like, well, you know what? At certain point, it doesn't make sense. My only thing is like, is the people, and especially older people, and that's all I care for. And that's all I came in. And I think I wouldn't say I wasted my time here, but like, I tried whatever I can. It's not, I'm blaming Ryan, John, or anybody else, I'm not. But it's just like that, it's the goddamn system. System has to be big enough or something. It's like we have to think about the people rather than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No. Stop doing that. It's not something that I'm coming out personally after him, after anybody. I'm not. I'm not. And I'm not saying that specifically you. It's not me. I'm just saying that it's like, you know what, we have to do something for downtown. Rather than my department, or rather than this, or rather than that, no. And that's all my thing is. And by sitting here and talking my heart and whatever is like, whatever I'm saying is like,
to other people, it doesn't make sense, but it's like, to me, it's like, you know what? This is the heart of, the old people that they supported for a long time, and it's about time we support them. At least something back. That $100 doesn't mean, I don't think so that means anything, but it's like, by talking here, by sitting here talking means I'm making more enemies for myself. Which I don't wanna do it. I don't wanna do it because I make a living, within this community. Among everybody. That's my living here. I don't work for the IG or whatever it is I want. This is my community, this is my community, and that's what I'm fighting for. Please understand that, it's not something that the water issue, whatever issue it is. That's my issue, that's our issue, should be our issues. It's not something personally, I'm going after John or Steve or whomever it is, I'm not going to. This is me. And if I hurt anyone, I personally apologize for that, and I'm sorry for that. And I don't wanna make any more enemies, not the Tripsy, not the John, not the Ron. That period, and I think this is the last time I'm talking on this stage. I'll be here for next 2 meetings, but it's like, you know what? I'm sorry, I promise. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Khan. Brian, just one quick clarification regarding updates for the Langen study and the water. Just wanted to clarify, you said we should be having a more robust conversation at our next meeting, or we're still waiting on a few more pieces of all with the insurance line before we have an update regarding that with the council?
I'm not aware of us waiting for any more information.
Okay,
And I think it's time to reconvene and let's discuss the strategy and then a way forward.
okay. Okay, good. I just want to clarify
Again,
that.
solution based.
Councilman Yudichak?
I just want to bounce off what Sammy said. Sammy, I think you've done what you were elected to do. You're fighting for the people. Just because we have differences with our directors and town manager, that's what we're elected to do. You've been a tremendous, hold on. You've been a tremendous asset, to this council. You come with no political background, but just what you wanted to do, and I don't want you to sit at the next 2 meetings not saying anything or voicing your concerns.
Honestly, I'm gonna go back. I miss my days, I miss my time that what I was. Somebody quoted me, how come that, a grocery store manager can't become a consul? I remember that. That email. And came on board, and I said, you know what? Well, just says. I wanted to say something that I like, I just ignored it. But it's like, you know what? To me, it's like, as I said, everything is planned, everything is, you just keep going, it's non-stoppable. So it's like, why I'm making more enemies for myself? By saying things what is right to me. I don't wanna do that. I don't wanna hurt any more people. I just don't wanna hurt, I just don't wanna, the people come to me every day, they make comments. Why you're not going for, I don't see your sign, I don't see your picture. I say, you know what, you don't deserve me. I'm not, I don't belong to that chair, I don't belong to that, councilwoman, I'm not belong to. Because I cannot hold my feelings. I just cannot. So it's not something that, I'm holding people, but like, that's my own decision, that I don't wanna go for second term, I just don't wanna be. I give up, I started. Honestly. And that's how I feel it, and I think, I lost my job. I don't know, it's like, You've been there 6 years, 4 years, 5. You know what? God bless you. Thank you.
Councilor Luba?
Thank you for putting up with me. And listening to me. Whatever I have to say, that's me. It's not, it was me. So sorry for your time. And I think I have a meeting with Brian on the Halloween day, and I told I said I put a best costume
It's custom day.
on that day, and let's see.
That's good.
And thank you.
Councilor Luba?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Building on what Mr. Khan is saying, we're all here for the right reasons. We're all trying to do better for what our town is. That we wouldn't have run for these positions if we didn't believe in what we were doing. That politics is a difficult job. Being town council, I mean, local politics is the worst politics because we all run into people all the time. You always have your neighbors and you always have people, no matter what you do, you're always gonna be 50% of the town's gonna hate you for it. That's a difficult thing about it, is that no matter what, you're never gonna make the right decision because somebody's gonna be upset. If you try and make the decision that's gonna make everyone happy, then you're making the wrong decision. It's tough, and that the oncoming people that are coming into these positions should be able to recognize that and should be ready for that. That being said, we are all trying to do the right thing, and that this is part of the process. That we're not gonna agree on everything all the time, and that sometimes things take time. That we, to say that we all see this and this is why we should do this. Yes, we all see certain things. We all see that we need certain things. But we need to make sure it's the right thing for the town. And there's a lot of other things where making one decision can have a tertiary and further on effects, which we all, as town leaders, we need to be able to make sure that we account for that. We can't just act on something because of a knee-jerk reaction. The state legislature is good for that. Sorry, Tammy, but that the town needs to be responsible. Yeah, the town.
I was just gonna say, hey now,
Yeah.
I
President
personally feel
Tony-
affronted.
But it is something that we need to make because we're dealing with such a tight budget on a lot of things, we need to make sure that we have the right decisions. And sometimes it takes time, sometimes we don't have that luxury, but that's something that we all try and do the best that we can, so. And Mr. Khan, you've done what you can, you've come in here with your ideas, and I respect that. We may not always agree, but I respect that, but this is something that it's a difficult job. I tell my wife every day, this is the best full-time job with no pay you could ever want. And that's really what it comes down to, but I just needed to say that we're all trying to do the best here. And that, that it may seem that it goes slow, but sometimes that's not a bad thing. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, we'll move to item 15, public participation on any subject within the jurisdiction of town council with a 3-minute limit. If you're on Zoom, you can hit *9 and the raise hand function, or if you're in person, you can approach the table and state your name and address for the record. See no one on Zoom? Oh, let's actually start with George. Oh, no, he's sorry.
Okay,
George, can go first.
thanks. George Ulrich, Fish and Game Road, Tolland. I have a couple questions. I'm not quite sure on this ambulance thing. It seems that we go to Vernon more than Vernon comes to Tolland. Are we reimbursed for that? Is there a way if we go to Vernon 500 times and they come and back us up 200 times, are we getting some kind of financial backing for our time and our use of our ambulance and our people and our gas and all that stuff?
I don't have the numbers in front of me. I don't know, Brian, if you would know, but that might be a good question to think back
No.
to public safety.
Is the answer.
No.
Moreover, I believe if a commercial ambulance has to come in during those times, we would have to pay for that.
It seems like a terrible way to run business, right? We're gonna lose money no matter how we do it then. If we go out more than people come in, it's a losing proposition for the town. It doesn't seem fair as a taxpayer town.
Vernon was told that and made adjustments and hired more staff, so hopefully leveling out.
Yeah, I think that was one thing I think Chief Lightoll did say is that the trend is starting to go down from the calls that they're getting from.
I had reached out to the town manager myself and said, come on.
Yeah.
And my other concern is, I think we've all noticed that as human beings, we pretty much messed up this planet. So it's only gonna get worse. So yes, I think we need a third ambulance, even if we get a used one, for a stopgap. And my quote would be, as soon as we get the second new one in, we order a third new one. Because that's gonna be 2-3 years down the road from, you're already gonna be somehow, if we order a new one every 5 years, that isn't working. Maybe it needs to be every 3. We need to revisit this and figure in this time, because look at what's going on in all the other states. They're all overwhelmed. There are ambulance people there, you know, and I know it's a lot of money. But when you look at the whole scheme of things, we're so worried about soccer courts and pickleball courts and all these other things. These are nice to haves. Our police, our fire, and our ambulance are needed. Those are things we have to have. Here's where we put our first dollar. And if there's anything left over, if there's any change, then it goes to all these other things. That's the way I see it. So I think we really need to visit how often we order these things, and I don't see it getting any better because they got disasters everywhere, every part of the country. So everybody wants, and probably what people are doing right now is, oh, we got 10 ambulances and we have trouble getting them. Let's order another 3. So even if they don't need them, everybody's ordering more than they have. So I think we need to revisit things like that, our fire equipment and our ambulance equipment, that kind of stuff, and even our personnel. If we need to hire a few more people to have more coverage, that's what we need. Because as nice as it is, we need another teacher or we need another road person. Public safety needs to be number 1 in my, thank you.
Thank you, George. And then Sean, you're good.
Sean Lappin, 168 Mountain Spring Road. I've only been recently made aware of the fact that Langen report has been released from the Vineyards area in town this meeting. I look forward to reading it in its entirety. While this report has no bearing on my property, I think this report and its handling will be telling of how the town will deal with other impacted properties in town. Also, based on the suggestion that Mr. Foley talked about with the need to engage with a third party for the ambulance review, the town is similarly engaged with an environmental consultant for the review of these contaminated wells. Why is this expert's consultant report filled with holes and missing data? My assumption is the data that was asked and required that was provided to these consultants for the DPW review, and similarly will be provided for the Department of Public Safety review. Why was all this information not provided to Langen engineering consultants? What efforts have been made to collect or ascertain the missing information? Because no one has come knocking at my door or reached out to me. To follow up on Mr. Foley's comment, I look forward to hearing more information from the Road Salt Task Force that is spearheading the contaminated wells that have been found across Tolland. I too am looking for solutions, and I hope that together we can navigate a way through all this. I would much rather be an active participant and aid in this process than making an adversarial one. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Could be on Zoom. Anyone else in the public? Going once, going twice. Item 16 on your hand, motion to adjourn at 9:05 p.m.
Make that motion.
So moved by Councilman Yudichak. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Luba, and we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman Yudichak,
Aye.
Councilor Luba,
Aye.
Councilman Nuccio,
Aye.
Commissioner Regan. Aye. Councilor Khan. Councilor Murray.
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so that's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.